Hello, welcome to To CTA Episode 2, Knowledge. The foundation for passing the CTA review board, but also for being a successful Salesforce expert, is knowledge. Knowledge is the base of our job. And in my experience, CTA knowledge is quite different than the knowledge I needed to get to the CTA, to get to this architect level or solution architect level. Up to the CTA, I could get by mostly by half-baked knowledge plus guessing plus experience plus quick Googling. Let me Google that for you. This is not what will cut it for the CTA review board by far. It took me a while to learn that, and this was, I think, the main reason why I underestimated the effort it cost me to get the CTA by about 50%. And this is why I want to share this today with you. And this is why it's also already episode 2, because it's the foundation for everything you could be doing going forward. Again, this is my personal opinion, verified with other CTAs. Think about it yourself, make out of it what you think. This is what I want to share and how I did it, but also how my study buddies did it. And the first thing is, the CTA knowledge is different because there is a hierarchy of sources of knowledge. It's not anymore that quick Googling will do it. It's not anymore that your experience or some knowledge from some friends will do it. You have to do it differently. And I will share a little bit how you can do it differently in the what next section. And in order to make it really stick for you, to give you something tangible, I have some homework prepared, which you can do, and I'm happy to give you feedback on your homework. So let's start with the differences. As we all know, there's very often, actually always, at least 2, 3, 4, 5 ways of doing something. It's never clear cut. Usually in our day-to-day job, we get by knowing one way of doing it. This is nothing an architect should know. An architect needs to know all the solutions for a certain problem with all the implications, all the limitations, all the considerations. It's never that one solution is better than any other solution. This is why the it depends is so important. It depends on the circumstances, on your team, on your resources, on your whole architecture, on your whole requirement. Bad experience is nothing you can rely on. Half-baked knowledge with something is not enough for the CTA. You have to be absolutely sure. I think it's nothing you can get by. Millions and millions of euros depend on your suggestions, on your decisions. You have to be absolutely sure about what you talk. And your knowledge has to be applicable in that moment. It has to be short and precise. It has to be C-level ready. You can't just rant on for 15 minutes to share your thoughts on two-way SSL and mutual SSL. It has to be 1 or 2 sentences. What can it do in these circumstances? Why did you suggest it? What are implications? What are the limitations? Over. Next topic. And this is why most people who get system and application architect have actually 70–80% of the knowledge already, which is required for the CTA. But the remaining 20% take a lot of time. They make up 80% of the effort. Or to quote one of my students, I learned more in the last month than I learned before in a whole year. You have to learn a lot. I would say something like 3–4 times what you learned up to this point. Of course, depends on your background, but for most of us, this will be true. Because you not only have to know how something works, you have to have proper sources of knowledge. The first source of knowledge is experts. Top 1% experts. I don't say somebody like me or a CTA or somebody who has a lot of experience. Somebody like the product owner of Sales Cloud, somebody who developed platform events, somebody who has been doing like for 20 years enterprise architecture. This is the top 1% experts. Really hard to come by. I think I know one of them, maybe for platform events. Nothing you can rely on a regular basis. On the contrary, you have something experience. My personal experience on Process Builder is they are really slow. This is even community knowledge. This is also weak knowledge because our experience can be wrong, can be tainted. It's only one person's experience. Community knowledge, something like the answer on page, on even a suggested answer on the community or on Stack Overflow, it's also weak. It is maybe wrong, outdated, wasn't properly researched, maybe no bad intent, just not strong. There are two strong sources of knowledge, in my opinion: experimentation and documentation. Official Salesforce documentation or your own experimentation, but done very properly, very thoroughly, not just clicking quickly and making it happen somehow. Testing positive cases, negative cases, you know it from test classes, from unit tested. Acting like a scientist. More details about my thoughts on hierarchy of sources of knowledge in a blog post I wrote a couple of weeks ago. A link is in the description. And once we accept the fact of hierarchy of sources of knowledge, we actually have to take into consideration that only strong sources are good enough. So everything has to be backed by a strong source of knowledge in order to be CTA ready. So what do I do with it now? First, I don't trust nobody, especially not myself. Am I sure? Do I have documentation for that? Can I verify that? If not, restudy, re-research. Just the other day, I re-researched the topic is a work order part of the Sales Cloud license. I had it written down in my own notes, but I didn't follow it up with experimentation and documentation. So I acted as like a scientist. So my theory was Sales Cloud has work orders. Then first I looked for trusted documentation, and since I couldn't find too much about it, I could find something, but I wasn't sure if this is trusted enough. I confirmed it with experiments and made sure that I wrote down all the findings I had. Since I did this so many times going for my CTA, so I had a lot of practice. It was actually rather quick. It took me only half an hour. The first time I did something like that, it took me a day. So practice, practice, practice. Make it a habit. Am I sure? Where's the documentation for that? Let me verify that. And do the same with your study buddies. If somebody tells you something, do the same questions. It's nothing mean to question other people. 90% of the time, these people are actually right. So I think, hey, Bibu, you have been right. It's probably one of the most written sentences in our Slack channel by me, because I questioned Bibu all the time. But this made me a better architect, because sometimes he was not right. Sometimes my hunch was correct, that we have to restudy, re-research the topic. Take the time, act like a scientist. And this leads me to the homework. You can practice this now with a simple feature, which might or might not be part of your CTA review board. Web to lead. So research web to lead, including the documentation and experimentation. As an outcome, you have applicable, short and precise answers for which options do exist, which considerations do you have for which options, for all the options, and which implications have all the options and all the considerations on all this, on org strategy, risk, license, and so forth. Write it down, document it, back it up with documentation, and create applicable, short and precise answers out of it. Once you have done that, I personally like to create presentations out of it. This is kind of the condensed version of it, because once I created a presentation, it becomes applicable for me, short and precise. I'm happy to give you feedback once you're done. Rather, take it to your study buddies, to your friends, to your colleagues, discuss it with them first. Make sure, again, to act like a scientist. Because after all, be a Salesforce nerd, have fun. And with that, I say bye-bye. See you next week for the third episode of our Road to CTA series. Bye.